I just couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this. It just, it's one thing to be doing documentation on the Buga Sphere and trying to understand what it is. We see a lot of these things depicted on these artifacts. But actually seeing the Buga Sphere chip on a sphere, this material is something that we're going to definitely have a lot more study and knowledge on soon. And I feel that it's going to give us a really great understanding of this culture and these pieces specifically. So this is really in depth. There's a lot of symbology and a lot of things in correlation with the Buga Sphere that we'll be looking at and trying to understand. And it's not just these pieces, or this piece I should say, but there's many other pieces that we found as well. I even document some of these in my book. I did 2 of my books actually. So over the last couple years, there's been a lot of spheres that I've photographed. I think about 10 or 12 different ones. And I've documented over 20 different spheres in physical form like this, different forms, but they all seem to be vessels or ships of some form. And, some of these I'm going to show you here in a minute are absolutely vessels. There's actually little astronauts and people inside of them with control panels and different sorts of reactor looking things. It's really something. The designs on this sphere from Tula, the fact that it was documented coming out, this will be part of our documentary that's coming that will highlight in majority the discovery with the sarcophagus and pyramid, but also some of these other important things to note about the topic and things that we've seen. So this is one of the spheres that is documented in my books. You can see the little astronaut in there. This one here is hollow inside. You can put a light in there and it lights up the windows. And this one here is the one with, it's obviously got that band down the middle, and that's kind of interesting. But it's also got this ruby-topped sphere type thing in there. This is the first one I ever documented here from 2020. And it's got a rider in there as well. And on the Buga Sphere, there's all these fiber optic things and 32 holes around the outside. And, I don't think there's 32 lines. I didn't count them, but it seems like there's more. However, there are, lines and, what looks like almost like wires going into the core of this thing. So that's an interesting concept as well. On the bottom of this stand is Horus and Thoth standing over what looks like some sort of technology or symbology. So we have a lot to learn still about the spheres, and this has come up quite a few times. And it's interesting, it's not just popping up from one person or another. And, it strikes me as crazy because we'd seen a lot of spheres, like this piece here would be not even thought twice about 6 months ago because it's just another sphere, right? But knowing now with the Buga Sphere and having this research and videos of it flying and crashing or of them flying, it's not just some random TikTok source either. In this situation, we have Skinwalker Ranch, who's documented them on the ranch, and they look exactly or very, very similar. In fact, the PhD Travis Taylor did an artist rendering of one of them. It was traveling, I believe, pretty fast, so it was kind of blurry. Their shot that they got, it was clearly a metal sphere, but the rendering showed it with, this, band around it, and so it's very consistent with what you see here. I don't think that's an accident. The magnetism that they show on this piece here, symbology, that's something that really has to be thought of. The understanding of magnetic energy at this point it's not just this piece either. There's a lot of prediction devices and pendulums and things of that nature that have magnets. There's scales that have a third pulley of magnetic energy that seems like it adds some sort of something, and so this hidden force or this magnetic force, something that to be utilizing as prediction and to guide, that sort of thing is what it seems like they had, trust in it. So clearly the real Buga Sphere has a very unique presence with these caps on all these round things. And then you look at the x-rays and what's inside of this and how it's put together. There's no welds, and we've seen again a fair sample of things, and we see a lot of them depicted with interesting round circles. We see not in the same configuration always, but just in that same perspective, and a lot of eyes depicted on these. And so that's something that I think we have to look at a little more clearly as well. And seeing some of these symbols on the Buga Sphere, it constantly just reminded me of some of the symbols that I had seen, not just in the Abuelos or the Tula pieces, but also from, certain, releases back here, all the way from 1942. As you can see this, as we zoom in on this UFO here on the far left, there's a symbol that we found on multiple artifacts from Mexico. So seeing these similarities and these synchronicities, it's hard to feel like it's an accident at this point. I'm not really someone to think it's going to be like that, but it really definitely has that feel to it, because we've seen these pieces again from Tula, from Abuelos, from the Micochan, from Guerrero, from Veracruz, from Puebla. I probably pronounced that wrong, but new places to me coming forward with these things. And is that an accident, or is that just people trying to cash in on the Buga Sphere? Time will tell. Research is something that's going to have to be done on these pieces, no question. But what's interesting too to me is that I have a lot of people who I've garnished really good relationships with, and they're bringing me these pieces. And I've developed a level of trust with many of them, and they already have a really good thing going. So to put hiccups into the matters with this and questioning this with such a radical claim, unless it was accurate, doesn't seem mathematically smart to me on the whole board. I mean, I could see maybe, these guys thought about it, but to have every person in every location. I mean, I've had other collectors call me and show me these items and say, what do you think about this? And that's what we're seeing now, is some of these items that mimic it, that look like it, that maybe they're made modernly, maybe they're old and they're replicas then, or making it, how we have the pine cones and the ankhs and things out of stone. Maybe these are to, imitate or to replicate what they saw, or what was around, what the gods used. I'm not sure, but it's definitely interesting to see these fallen demigods of the demiurge, which is Saturn or Lucifer. You see all these spheres around them in many of these objects. And so to see these spheres coming back, and some of the ancient texts and what it talks about, like in even the Bible, for instance, with Revelation, and Pistis Sophia, with a time of looking to the left and a time of looking to the right, only time will tell. Some of these pieces don't look right to me at all, but synchronicities and research, it's can't just write things off like some of these guys saying it's a hoax when you don't know for sure. Research has to be done, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Until next time.